Well, the U.S. state of South Carolina has passed a ban on abortions beginning at 6 weeks in a hotly contested bill that saw a few Republican women, in a rare move, voting against it. Our press reviewer, Diptika Laurent, is here with the details.
Well, Aaron, it's up to Governor Henry McMaster now to sign off on that legislation, but he said that he will do that anyway. So this is pretty much going to be set in stone. South Carolina's Senate voting to pass this ban on abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy, despite, as you mentioned, that filibuster in the Senate by the Senate's only 5 female members. There are only 5 female members in the Senate of South Carolina. 3 of them Republicans, all 5 women sought to, but ultimately failed to block the vote. As the New York Times explains, South Carolina had kind of become a safe haven in a way for women seeking abortions, as much of the U.S.'s southern states have already moved to restrict abortions since the Roe v. Wade right to abortion legislation was repealed last year. In fact, since the repealing of that legislation, 25 states in the U.S. have already moved to block access to abortion. Anti-abortion campaigners say they'll be appealing the ban in court, where they're hoping to use a January state Supreme Court ruling that upheld a right to abortion as sort of a precedent to contest this new legislation, Aaron.
So that ban, Dipti, is one of a couple different stories making front page news in the United States. There's also another story making headlines. It's been 1 year today since the Uvalde school shooting, in which 19 children and 2 teachers lost their lives in Texas.
Yeah, that's right. It's garnering some attention in the U.S. front pages. This is from the New York Times. It's here on the front page of the New York Times. Finding purpose in grief. A lot of the papers looking at how the families have tried to move on since that terrible school massacre at Rubb Elementary School in Uvalde a year ago. Today, notably, police took more than an hour to kill the gunman. The medical response was disjointed, and a year on, the editors of the Washington Post, who you see here, are also talking about it on their front page. The editors of the Washington Post really looking at, in its editorial today, the questions that still need to be answered. Notably, the paper denounces the Texas Department of Public Safety, who have withheld important records from that day, including 911 calls, but also body camera footage. And in fact, the department is refusing to release that information. The Post and a consortium of news outlets have filed a lawsuit to force their disclosure, saying that this information could provide crucial details to exactly what happened that day in terms of the authorities' response. Meanwhile, the Houston public media notes that plans are now underway to rebuild that school, so children will never have to step foot in Rubb Elementary School ever again. The new structure that they're planning to build on the very site of the old school will be protected, of course, from the outside, but it will also honor the 21 victims of the school shooting with a steel tree statue right in the middle of the new school. Aaron.
Let's move on now, Dipti, to Spain, where the fallout continues after Real Madrid forward Vinicius Jr. expressed outrage over those racial taunts directed at him during a match against Valencia last Sunday.
Well, there is definitely a sense of soul-searching in the Spanish media today. This is from El País, the Spanish daily paper, which is looking at racism in Spain beyond just football, but more widely in Spanish society. It's interviewed 8 people in Spain of foreign backgrounds who talk about how they've endured racism, but more subtle, more tacit forms of racism. Now, for El País, the problem is indeed that racism is ubiquitous. The paper saying racism is still discrimination, whether it's, quote, subtle or overt, whether it's conscious or unintended. It's in the streets, in the workplace, in the police force, in government administrations. It's at an individual level, but also at an institutional level. The paper denounces really the widespread nature of racism in Spanish society today.
And finally, from you, Dipti, this story sounds like an ethical nightmare. It's a tech millionaire who's gone to extreme lengths in his quest to stay young.
Yeah, that's right. We're talking about Brian Johnson. He's a software tech millionaire, Aaron. He's injected himself with his own teenage son's plasma as part of a drive to demonstrate how a middle-aged man might be able to regain the body of an 18-year-old. That's what the Times of London reports today. Now, Johnson sold his company for $100 million when he was in his 30s, and at the time he was overworked, tired, and overweight, and so he used all this money to really focus on health and getting healthy. In his quest for youth, he spends $2 million a year in the hopes of regaining the many organs, including the brain, heart, lungs, kidney, penis, and rectum of an 18-year-old. His study borderlines on obsession. He's taken over 33,500 pictures of his bowels and flosses with dental silk. That's a lot of effort to stay young when you could just follow the advice of this lady here. She's Ireland's oldest woman. Her name is Maireann Hughes. She's 109 years old. Her secrets to living longer: bird watching, listening to music, and playing Scrabble. Not as interesting as injecting yourself with your son's plasma, but probably a lot cheaper. In any case,
and certainly, as you say, easier than taking picture of your bowels. I'm not even sure how that's possible, but hey, I guess with a lot of money you can do anything. Diptyka Laurent with the Press Review. Thank you.